especially if RecoN can win, that's going to be a big punch on B's position, and it's going to be something that could propel RecoN to a playoff spot.
Let's see how this one's going to play out. It's an interesting clash of styles as well. B, known as an aggressive player that will play very off-the-cuff, unique builds. RecoN on the other side. Best way I can describe him, I've talked to him. How would you define your play style? I like people to try and hit me. He actually said that once because he is the turtle. Despite the fact he's represented by a raccoon, he lives in a shell. This guy is very happy to sit at home and boom up while you try to end his game. Let's see if it plays out that way, though.
Indeed, it is going to be HRE versus the Rus, probably the two most popular civilizations on this map, especially when England or the English are banned. We'll have to see how these two match up, because we've been theory crafting about this for a long time. Rus, obviously, having insane power in their fishing eco, and you can unlock that much faster with the larger amount of villagers we start with here. Whereas on the other side, HRE, you have that prelate buffing more villagers than usual, or at least that's usually the case, although for RecoN, he's just using them to buff the food villagers, not the lumberjacks.
We'd also like to point out that in our sign-up forms, we have players waiver the right to beat admins with a stick when they get a crappy spawn on Holy Island as HRE, which is why RecoN cannot RecoN about his situation, as he has got one of those awkward spawns where there's no forward wood line, which means you can't get a good Ark and Chapel placement.
Yeah, that's not a lovely spot for him by any means. In fact, I feel like it's not even about the Ark and Chapel spot, because, well, that's always a gamble, right? You can't take it granted that you have a wood line close to the gold. The bigger concern with that is that your golds are all on the front. This is very much a detail that B could exploit.
Yeah, I also just think these type of generations feel a bit rougher because, like, typically you get two generations. I think, like, you know, specific details apart, you can break down Holy Island into two generation types. Long wood line with a front spawn, and then fat stack pushing its butt out into your base, right? We got the fat butt here. And the problem with that is, like, when you drop your Ark in, you prefer a line, right? I feel like you can reach deeper, it feel better, and you're closer to a retractor point. I just feel like you don't get as much efficiency long-term off of these type of generations.
Yeah, now RecoN is playing a different build than what you usually see here from the HRE. Usually what you see is a heavy commitment towards wood at the beginning and then double docks into fishing ships. He's only playing one dock for the time being. He's actually much more focused on land-based food eco than usual, but it looks like he's still going to play the Ark and Chapel, so no crazy Minework Palace shenanigans, which actually wouldn't be unprecedented. We have seen some players experimenting with the Minework Palace on this map.
Yeah, and like there's some matchups where you can do that. So I think to kind of go back to a match we saw between Beastie and Vortex, he went Minework and he had the potential of like Burgrave, because in that matchup, Chinese, another pick that can be popular on water hybrid maps, I don't feel like your feudal age tech up time is as competitive, and your access to units that can counter a men-at-arms play isn't good. The Rus, on the other hand, have multiple layers that make them very effective at buffering away early men-at-arms plays. For a start, they get all this extra gold from the bounty hunt, right? So they already have enough gold for a tech up. And the other thing is they have access to knights. So it kind of puts RecoN in this situation where he probably doesn't want to play land early. And even if he tries to rush like a tech up, he's going to give away too much in water, right? That's why I think we frequently see Rus as a solution to HRE, if anything.
Yeah, now, speaking of gold, B's gold spots aren't great either. So one of the things that could be exploited in the long run by RecoN is that detail, and especially if we see an extended feudal age and both players starting to add some military on land as well, then we could easily see RecoN trying to pressure those gold mines to shut down the gold income of B and then make it much more difficult to push the water. But that is still quite some time away, because the initial aggressor on land will likely be B, and he's already dropping Kremlin with 2 militias popping out.
Oh. So early militia aggression, as is typical, but that gold vein being on the front side, it's easy harassment. Also, the amount of damage militia does, a prelate can't just sit there and heal, right? Also, the prelate can easily be chased down by a 1.5 movement speed unit. And that's why you're seeing the outpost reaction from RecoN. RecoN is probably one of the most avid users of outposts when it comes to HRE play, but this one is quite delayed, and it might actually cost him a villager or two.
That's going to be problematic. He's going to have to try and heal that villager possibly. It looks like he gets away. Even without wheelbarrow, he can consider himself lucky.
Yeah, that was actually really well played by RecoN. He noticed that B wasn't targeting the builders, which would have been the better value for him. So now you just get the outpost rushed up, and the militia plan falls apart. It is still idle time though, right? Like you can see this prelate is not buffing the gold. He's healing people who aren't even working.
Speaking of the gold though, RecoN is investing quite a few villagers into that, and we don't see a lot of combat ships out there for him. This could easily lead to a semi-fast castle, because this gold income, especially with the wood income that he has, feels a little too excessive, only to be spent on ships.
Yeah, I genuinely think like RecoN just wants castle age by 8 or 9 minutes. So it's really on B to like force RecoN to reinvest. Like it's long term, you know, you could argue you just kill his eco, it's kind of worth it. But if this is like a Burgrave play and he can at least partially defend and say have 4 or 5 fishing boats, maybe 6 going, I think it's enough to threaten B's land force here. So we'll see what the reaction's going to be.
If this is a Burgrave play, that could be deadly though, because there is limited access to save code for B. He could forever be stuck in Feudal Age if that's the case. For now, he's just pushing archer ships against the ballista ships out there, and RecoN is going to hold this off, and now it seems pretty clear that the plan here for RecoN is just to go into Castle Age, and I think he's going to have enough to hold off the navy of B, because B isn't committing much to water either.
Now, B kind of baited himself there. He really want to get the fishing boat kill, and it's going to mean that he's the first one to lose the Springald ship. Also, that detail you mentioned around gold, not only does he have to think about the idea in Castle Age, but he might want to get demo ships, considering RecoN is primarily just building Springalds.
Yeah, so far it's just a poking and probing on the water. Both of these players actually working towards Castle Age. The big difference is that B is lacking gold for this. He's floating a lot of food, no gold. On the other side, RecoN also has a big food bank, but he has a purpose for that. He has a use for it in the next 1 minute, and that's gonna be a Castle Age with the Regnitz Cathedral, so no Burgrave play from him.
Yeah, so like Burgrave gives you a small window of opportunity, but most players just feel that the Burgrave isn't worth it. It was kind of a baited build. It's just better to get Regnitz for that ceiling you have. It also means that long term you can just push more units. Like sure, maybe you don't go men-at-arms, but instead you go knights, and knights individually, while they cost more, can do a lot more on their own, right? Exactly. Whereas men-at-arms, you need like 10 plus to really feel like you're doing anything.
I feel like the only reason that could have justified going for the Burgrave is how exposed B's golds are, but I agree with you. I think there is just much more long-term potential, much more longevity in that Regnitz Cathedral, and then you still have the knights working around, and obviously you're also up against the Rus. Don't forget that they will work their way towards the relics with the Abbey of the Trinity as well, so there's a bit of a race towards the relics here. So yeah, I think I agree with the fact or the notion that the Regnitz is probably much more worth it here.
Yeah, and also RecoN, even just prepping a few spears, because you are playing against the Rus, right? They can have access to those knights early on. But I'm expecting like double stables drop after this from RecoN. He should have enough wood in probably about 10 seconds to get that done. And he's playing defensive, right? So you don't necessarily need as many ships to hold. He has got a decent amount at this point, right? Like half-half between archer ships and Springalds guarantees that B can never win this fight off the back of a boom ship play.
Yeah, Volo popped over here. Curious choice. I don't think he can get the conversions. He could have probably just ran for it.
Okay, that was a bit tight. Of course, the militia would still time out, but the way that was going to play out is if the conversion came through, I think the knight instantly gets pinched. But more importantly, RecoN, that buys him enough room to now run this back to the outpost just before the prelate will die.
It's better than that, because don't forget, militias, they will expire, so by pushing them away for 10-15 seconds, you just decrease their efficiency by a massive margin, and you see now, militias falling back home, there is gonna be absolutely no use to them before they expire, and B tried to wall in the relics, but he comes in a little too late. 2 relics will be guaranteed for RecoN, and I think the cool thing for him is that not only does he have Castle Age, not only does he have the relics, he still has water control, so despite the fact that B is assembling a navy to push him, it's not like those usual cases where one player reaches castle, but he forfeits the water in return.
I honestly, like, I'm going to say it until players start doing it. I want to see a transport ship. Like, you've done a good job. You've got your hands on 2 relics. That third one is on the island, and the way that B's positioned himself doesn't block you from getting it. He also doesn't have fishing boats on the front side, so he doesn't see if you sneak onto the island from the eastern flank. Well, we'll see if he wants to go in that. In the meantime, Rus are just going to do what Rus do. You know, they hate wildlife. They spit in the face of it. Say, ha, Lion King. I hate Pumbaa. Well, demo ships hate ships. Nice strike there. RecoN caught not looking, and B with a notable advantage here if that demo ship can't hit.
Yeah, demo wasn't successful out there. Now, don't forget, we are talking about Castle Age over here for RecoN, and he's also mining stone, so there's going to be some added level of protection on those docks. And look at that. Chop through coming in, sneaky RecoN, trying to get that extra relic hidden behind those walls as B is not looking.
Yeah, we call him Sneak On. He's going to get his Sneak On there because there's nothing really guarding that relic. It was just a wall, and that's literally it. And if you think about it, B's actually bringing his troops from the opposite side, so even less likely to easily intercept. But for the moment, he does have the Knight lead, right? Almost hitting double digits in terms of heavy cavalry. RecoN's slow on the catch-up. Might just need to think about mass spears, but the problem is now B can just counter him by going Archer, Knight, and pushing. Demo ships, in the meantime, will at least push back against this little bit of bite, but not enough damage done. The demo's in! And RecoN is not looking.
That's terrible. He had a demo that could have traded off 2 over there, but he wasn't looking. And instead of just getting rid of those 2 demos, keeping his fleet alive, now he gets wasted on the water. And suddenly, B's got momentum both on land and water.
We see it so often on this map, right? This is why this is the big switch up we've seen. We're so used to kind of seeing everyone just focus on the water side, hold the island, just pump out naval. The best players are the ones that do this. They start a step between the two. I'm on land, I'm on sea. And the moment you're not looking, a creep in with a demo ship can decide everything. And just like that, RecoN is now relegated to land mass only. In a situation where he's only got 2 relics, if I'm not mistaken, he hasn't really set up any farms. Okay, they're coming out. This is fresh though, right? Like this is the beginning of the transition. And the only reason RecoN can get this many farms down is because he no longer has a use for all this wood that he stored for more ships, right? Because he's fully forfeited waterside.
It's worse than that. He was using sheep for a long time. Plus, he's got the extra gather rate because of the prelate. So he depleted the food inside his base pretty fast. And he's about to run out of all the sheep. So he needs that farm transition. But this is well seen by B. And this is the window for B to either double down on this or just to go castle. He's got 13 knights, so you could easily dive this base.
That's dicey. RecoN, I mean, he could be close to just calling GG at this rate. Just a few archers in there, the few knights he's got to try and defend this. But remember, folks, B has more than this. They're busy cleaning up the last of the docks. Once they're done there, there's only one target in mind. A very open and exposed HRE base.
Oh yeah, RecoN is struggling with numbers big time over here. He didn't go for the Burgrave Palace, but this also means that his production was very lackluster as he entered Castle Age. He's just now catching up with the production buildings, but now there's a different problem. That's the lack of resource income to actually sustain good levels of production.
And it's not just that, like there's a ripple effect to that. He hasn't gone for blacksmith upgrades, right? So like, you know, if you haven't got the extra armor, that's going to allow these knights to remain tanky. So if B ever techs up, just a small group of archers like this will do substantial damage because he has got a blacksmith. And he will be teching up, guaranteed, in probably the next minute.
Yeah, knight number is now increasing here for RecoN, and anytime they're out of combat, they could be healed by the prelate. Still though, B is getting close to Castle Age himself, and he's going to have a decent amount of knights to work with as he gets to Castle. So the window is shrinking here for RecoN. He needs to take a fight before B gets those upgrades.
Exactly, that's the key thing, right? B's not necessarily just throwing away all the knights. Now, admittedly, RecoN could heal the damage done if he was building additional prelates, but he's not. He's kind of stretched thin on the gold income, right? Like gold being outside the front side of his base, not as easily accessed, a lot of idle time there. So he's relying on this passive generation. So adding more prelates in becomes a delicate affair.
Yeah, nice little raids over here by the archers as well. It's not like they can do much against the knights, so the best use for them is just to harass the villagers, and every single bit of those hits just stings, especially because now B's eco is crazy. It's 90 eco, and he doesn't even want the Abbey at this point, knowing that the relics have already been collected mostly. He's just gonna go for the high trade house.
Oh boy. And that's gonna probably generate, I think he killed the boar as well. Probably looking at like 190, maybe? Like
something along those lines.
I'm gonna say 186, because I feel like we're so used to seeing big numbers on King of the Hill, and every time it's like...
I think it's
nowhere
154.
near what we expect.
Let's see.
You're more reserved. I'm trying to be ambitious. I'm probably gonna be wrong.
241. Okay.
I respect that. You know, like okay. The reason we were wrong, it wasn't our fault. It was clearly Vodka's because he didn't let us look at the landmark long enough. All right. T-tours.
Now this is ugly. This is just ugly. It's double the eco for B. He's got a crazy amount of passive gold income from there as well. He's going to get to tier 3 bounty as well. It's going to boost his food income. And now there's going to be a clash of knights before the castle age upgrades are coming in for B. RecoN knows he needs to take this fight before those upgrades are in.
Yeah, he just needs to delay. Like, the actually big deal is going to be the boys' fortitude. It's actually absurd how much extra health you get. You can take the fight now, but the longer he drags it out, the worse it gets. And the militia, they can actually buy enough time. This is a brilliant overlap. B, the militia should last long enough that by the time they expire, and it should be the point where RecoN wants to turn around, the extra 20 health is going to be on each and every one of these knights.
Yeah, that's a perfect use of the militia. He had just enough of them to push away the knights of RecoN. RecoN has to retreat, and this buys time for B not only to get the Castle Age Knights upgrade, but also Boyar's Fortitude. And with that, now his knights are better than what RecoN has. Numbers are dead even, but there are also crossbows being added by B.
Yeah, and we also have the melee armor upgrade already for B. So, like, if they are on even knight counts, RecoN loses. It's not even close. Right, like the extra 20 health actually matters. It's basically an extra strike almost. And then with the effective HP increase, like you just get rolled. So RecoN's probably gonna have to add in spearmen. Spearmen that, you know, aren't bad units, but the crossbows can tickle them down in small numbers. Bro, this feels like is this a new group of militias? Because they feel like they've been here a long time.
20 seconds left on them, but expect B to just try and dive with them, do something, anything with them before they expire. You're going to hit the gold mine here. Some Landsknecht are being mixed in, but they'll be picked apart by the archers from the backline.
Okay, yeah, you know, we can win the fight with our knights if we make the peasants tank the charge. It's very big brain, very chivalrous. Flash around the backside. And this many knights, if they can stick on top of the crossbow, should get annihilated. Front side, this is looking good because I think RecoN, yeah, he's layering in the healing factor here. And the Inspired Warriors buff means that he's going to be able to actually rinse B in this fight.
Yeah, the question is, can he sustain this? Because you feel like he's sacrificing everything he has in order to survive. And if you look at B's influx, or just the flux of units coming through the map, it looks a lot better. And look at that, trenches are even being dug over here by B, getting some layers going just so that it's impossible to hit those crossbows behind the walls. And yeah, there's a next wave coming from B, not so much from RecoN.
Yeah, I love the Inspired Warriors idea. You know, the combat healing not as good, but the extra damage maybe kind of mitigates the tech advantage you're at, disadvantage you're at in terms of like the melee side, but it just doesn't feel like enough. And with that wall up, you notice B didn't build up the whole way across. It was just this hilarious Benny Hills moment where if the Knights tried to target them, they were just going to keep running to each side of the wall the long way around. Just a great read by B and a great opening to the series, which should end with a victory for the Russian player.
Indeed. Now it's just a flood of units inside the eco. This tower is very well fortified, but problem here now is lack of access to resources, and RecoN decides to tap out. That Castle Age really didn't give him much of a boost, especially because it didn't have great production, but this could easily come down to just losing that naval fight in just a blink of an eye. One demo sinks his fleet, and in just a matter of seconds, he lost all naval control, and from that point on, it's B